I still remember the day I stumbled upon an obscure article about identical twins with a peculiar connection to the paranormal. The headline read, "Twin Telepathy, a study on identical twins sharing a mysterious bond." It was as if fate had led me down this twisted path, and I couldn't help but feel drawn to the unknown. Little did I know that my curiosity would soon put me in the midst of a nightmare that would leave an indelible mark on my soul. It began with a series of unsettling encounters that seemed to blur the lines between reality and the supernatural. I had always been fascinated by abandoned asylums, those crumbling structures that whispered tales of madness and despair. As I delved deeper into my research, I found myself at the entrance of Oakwood Asylum, its once majestic facade now shrouded in an aura of foreboding. I stepped out of my car, the crunching gravel beneath my feet echoing through the desolate landscape. The wind carried a faint whisper, as if the trees themselves were warning me to turn back. But I was resolute, driven by a morbid curiosity that compelled me to explore the depths of this forsaken place. As I approached the entrance, I noticed two figures standing in the doorway, their faces identical yet somehow different. It was then that I felt it, an unsettling sense of déjà vu, as if I had stumbled upon a long-lost twin. The air seemed to thicken, heavy with an unspoken connection that left me breathless. I took a step forward, my heart racing in anticipation. The figures turned to face me, their eyes locking onto mine with an unnerving intensity. In that instant, I knew that I had entered a realm where the boundaries between reality and the paranormal were about to become blurred forever. I took a step forward, my heart racing in anticipation. The figures turned to face me, their eyes locking onto mine with an unnerving intensity. In that instant, I knew that I had entered a realm where the boundaries between reality and the paranormal were about to become blurred forever. As I stood frozen, the twins began to move towards me, their identical features seeming to shift and ripple like the surface of a pond. Their eyes never left mine, and I felt an inexplicable sense of recognition, as if I had known them before. One of the twins reached out a hand, its fingers brushing against my arm with a chill that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to pull away, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot. The touch was like nothing I had ever experienced. It was both familiar and yet completely alien. The twins began to speak in unison, their voices low and husky, weaving together in a hypnotic cadence that sent my mind reeling. "Welcome," they whispered, their words echoing through the empty halls of Oakwood Asylum like a chilling mantra. I felt a creeping sense of dread as I tried to process what was happening. The twins' eyes seemed to be drawing me in, pulling me towards some dark and ancient secret that lurked just beyond the veil of reality. I knew then that I had stumbled upon something much bigger than myself, something that threatened to consume me whole. The air grew colder, the shadows deepening into dark pools that seemed to suck the light out of the world. The twins' voices grew louder, their words becoming a cacophony of sound that left me reeling. And then, in an instant, everything went silent. I stood there frozen in terror as the twins began to move closer, their faces inches from mine. I could feel their breath on my skin, warm and rank, like the scent of decay. The world around me melted away, leaving only the two of them, their identical features blurring into a single, twisted entity that seemed to pulse with a malevolent life of its own. It was then that I realized I had found what I was searching for, but at what cost? I felt a jolt of fear as the twins' faces seemed to merge into one, their features twisting into a grotesque parody of humanity. Their skin was deathly pale, with dark veins pooling beneath the surface like a network of malevolent pipes. I tried to step back, but my legs were rooted to the spot, unable to move or escape the crushing weight of their gaze. The twins' eyes seemed to bore into my soul, searching for some hidden truth that only they could see. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, my every thought and emotion laid bare before them. The air was heavy with tension, thick with an unspoken threat that made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the twins spoke in unison once more, their voices low and menacing. "We've been waiting for you," they hissed, their words dripping with malice. "You have a special connection to us, one that cannot be denied." I tried to respond, but my voice was trapped in my throat. The twins took a step closer, their faces inches from mine. I could feel their hot breath on my skin, making my skin prickle with unease. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The twins' faces returned to normal, their eyes losing their unnerving intensity. They stood there for a moment, regarding me with an expressionless gaze, before finally turning and walking away into the darkness of the asylum. I was left standing alone, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I had just experienced something profound, something that would change me forever. But what did it all mean? And what lay ahead? As I stood there, trying to process the encounter with the twins, I began to feel an inexplicable sense of connection to them. It was as if our minds were linked in some way, allowing me to tap into their thoughts and emotions. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that I could hear their innermost thoughts, like whispers in my ear. The twins seemed to be sharing a secret with each other, one that they were eager to keep hidden from the world. Their words were laced with an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty, and I knew that I had stumbled upon something much bigger than myself. As I watched them disappear into the darkness, I felt a strange sense of longing. It was as if I had lost two pieces of myself, two parts of my psyche that I couldn't quite recall. The twins' connection to me seemed to be growing stronger by the minute, and I knew that I had to learn more about this mysterious bond. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, into the darkness of the asylum. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and I could feel the weight of history bearing down on me. But I pressed on, driven by a morbid curiosity and a desire to uncover the truth about the twins and our connection. As I walked deeper into the asylum, I began to notice strange symbols etched into the walls. They seemed to be some sort of code, one that held the key to understanding the twins' connection to me. I followed the symbols, my heart pounding in my chest, until I came to a door hidden behind a tattered curtain. The door was old and rusted, with a large iron knocker in the shape of a lion's head. I reached out a trembling hand and grasped the knocker, feeling a surge of adrenaline as I turned it. The sound of scraping metal echoed through the hallway, followed by the creaking of hinges. And then, slowly, the door began to open. A warm golden light spilled out into the corridor, illuminating the dark recesses of the asylum. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in anticipation, and what I saw took my breath away. As I stepped through the doorway, I was transported to a world of eerie silence. The golden light spilled out into the corridor, illuminating rows of abandoned wards and patient rooms. The air was thick with dust and the stench of decay, and I could feel the weight of history bearing down on me. I wandered deeper into the asylum, my footsteps echoing off the walls. Every step seemed to creak beneath my feet, as if the very foundations of the building were protesting my presence. I felt like an intruder in a place that was best left forgotten. The walls seemed to press in around me, adorned with faded signs and rusty medical equipment. In every room, I saw evidence of lives once lived, but now lost forever. I stumbled upon a patient log, filled with scribbled notes and cryptic entries. As I flipped through the pages, I caught snippets of whispers, murmurs of madness and despair. It was as if the very patients who had once called this place home were still trapped within its walls, their voices echoing in my mind. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was not alone in the asylum. The twins seemed to be watching me from every corner, their presence lurking just out of sight. I quickened my pace, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere and find some answers about our connection. But with every step, I felt like I was being drawn deeper into the heart of madness that had once dwelled within these walls. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a dilapidated carnival that seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. The rickety booths and rusted attractions loomed before me like skeletal fingers, casting long shadows in the fading light. A tattered banner creaked in the wind, reading "Welcome to Wonderworld" in faded letters. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached the entrance, where a decrepit ticket booth seemed to be waiting for me. The ticket vendor, a cadaverous figure with sunken eyes and a twisted grin, beckoned me inside with a bony finger. "Step right up, kid," he croaked, his voice like a rusty gate. "Glimpse the wonders of Wonderworld." I hesitated for a moment, but my curiosity got the better of me. I handed over a crumpled dollar bill and stepped through the entrance into a world that seemed to be straight out of a nightmare. The air was thick with the scent of sugar and grease, but beneath it lurked something far more sinister. As I wandered through the carnival, I encountered freaks and misfits who seemed to be trapped in a perpetual state of terror. There were contortionists with bodies twisted at impossible angles, fire eaters who seemed to be perpetually on fire, and fortune tellers who offered cryptic prophecies that only added to my confusion. But it was the carousel that really caught my attention. The horses seemed to be watching me as I approached, their glassy eyes glinting in the fading light. I felt a creeping sense of dread as I climbed onto a stallion with a coat as black as coal. As the music began to play, I felt myself being drawn into a world of madness and terror. The carousel seemed to be moving on its own, the horses dancing in time to a rhythm that only they could hear. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The music died, the horses froze in place, and I was left standing alone in the darkness, surrounded by the creepy carnival's twisted grin. As I stood frozen on the carousel, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. The air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, and I could feel eyes upon me once more. But this time, they were not just the twins, there were others, watching from the shadows. I tried to take a step back, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot. Suddenly, the carousel began to move again, its horses galloping in a frantic rhythm. I felt myself being pulled towards them, as if by an unseen force. The music reached a fever pitch, and I was consumed by a vision of twisted, surreal landscapes. I saw cities made of candy, oceans of liquid fire, and skies that raged with storms of razor-sharp wind. The images were so vivid, so real, that I felt myself being torn apart by their intensity. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the vision ended. I stumbled backwards, gasping for breath, as the carousel came to a stop. The horses froze in place once more, their glassy eyes glinting in the darkness. But this time they seemed different. Their eyes seemed to hold a hint of mischief, a suggestion that they had been playing a trick on me all along. I took advantage of the distraction to make my escape, but as I turned to flee, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood run cold. The twins were standing behind me, their faces twisted into grotesque grins. And this time, they were not alone. There was someone else with them, someone who seemed to be watching me with an intensity that bordered on the malevolent. A figure shrouded in shadows, its presence seeming to draw the very light out of the air. I knew then that I had stumbled into something much bigger than myself, something that threatened to consume me whole. As I stood frozen in terror, the figure emerged from the shadows, its presence seeming to fill the entire carnival. The twins moved closer, their grins growing wider as they seemed to be feeding off my fear. The figure loomed over me, its features still indistinct but its malevolent energy palpable. I tried to speak, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The air was thick with tension, and the carnival's music seemed to take on a sinister tone. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting the entire area into an eerie gloom. I felt like I was being pulled towards some unseen abyss, with no escape from the terror that surrounded me. The twins began to whisper in my ear, their voices a maddening susurration that seemed to be driving me closer to madness. The figure reached out a bony hand and touched my face, its cold skin sending shivers down my spine. I tried to push it away, but it only laughed, a sound like the creaking of old wooden joints. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The music ended, the lights flickered back to life, and the carnival seemed to return to its usual twisted normality. But I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The unsettledness had grown inside me, a festering wound that could never be healed. And as I stumbled out of the carnival, I felt like I was being pulled back in, drawn into a world of horrors from which there was no escape. As I walked away from the carnival, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had left something behind, something important. And then, as if fate itself was pushing me towards it, I stumbled upon an old mansion at the edge of town. The house loomed above me, its windows like empty eyes staring back. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I approached the entrance, but something compelled me to step inside. The air within was thick with dust and memories, and I could feel the weight of generations past bearing down on me. I wandered through room after room, each one filled with relics of a bygone era. And then, in a small, dimly lit study, I found it. A family heirloom passed down from great-grandmother to granddaughter was a small, ornate box with a strange symbol etched onto its lid. As I lifted the lid, a faint glow emanated from within, and I felt a sudden jolt of recognition. This was my legacy. The carnival, the twins, the supernatural events, it all seemed to be connected to this box. And as I opened it further, a piece of paper slipped out, bearing a message scrawled in handwriting that looked uncannily like my own. "The truth is not what you think it is," it read. "Look again." I felt a chill run down my spine as the words seemed to echo through the ages, speaking directly to me. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went black. When I came to, I was back in my own bed, the box nowhere to be found. But the message lingered on, echoing in my mind like a mantra. The truth is not what you think it is. The unsettledness within me grew, a sense of unease that would not subside. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had only scratched the surface of something much deeper, much darker. Something that would change my life forever. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had only scratched the surface of something much deeper, much darker. Something that would change my life forever. I decided to dig deeper, to uncover the hidden truths that had been hiding in plain sight all along. I began to research my family's past, poring over old records and speaking with distant relatives. And what I found was shocking. My great-grandmother, it turned out, had been a member of a secret society, one that had been obsessed with the supernatural and the occult. The carnival, the twins, everything seemed to be connected to this society. But why? What did they want from me? As I delved deeper into the mystery, I began to experience strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, whispers in the night, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. It was as if the society had been waiting for me all along, patiently biding its time until I was ready to uncover the truth. And then, one night, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my great-grandmother herself, written in her own handwriting. "Dear descendant," it read, "I know you're trying to uncover the truth about our society, but be warned, once you know, there's no going back. Are you prepared to face what's been hidden for so long?" I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the words, knowing that I was on the cusp of something momentous, something that would change my life forever. And with that, I knew that I had to keep digging, no matter where it led. As I continued to dig deeper, the lines between reality and madness began to blur. The whispers in the night grew louder, the shadows on the wall seemed to move of their own accord, and I found myself questioning my own sanity. Every step I took led me further down a rabbit hole of terror and confusion. I became convinced that the society was closing in on me, that they were watching me through every window, every mirror, every reflection. The words of my great-grandmother echoed in my mind like a mantra. Once you know, there's no going back. I felt myself spiraling out of control, descending into a world of madness and despair. The carnival seemed to be waiting for me at the end of every street, its twisted lights and laughter beckoning me towards some unknown fate. And then, one night, I stumbled upon an ancient ritual, hidden away in a dusty old bookshop. It was a ritual of summoning, of calling forth powers that lurked beyond the veil of reality. I felt a thrill of excitement mixed with terror as I read the words, knowing that I had to proceed. The next few days were a blur of chanting and incantation, of sacrifice and devotion. And then, on the night of the full moon, everything went black. When I came to, I was alone in my room, surrounded by candles and strange artifacts. But something felt off. The air seemed thick with an otherworldly presence, and I knew that I had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The society had claimed me, body and soul. And as I looked around at the twisted symbols etched into the walls, I knew that I was forever lost in their world of madness and terror. As I stood before the dark altar, surrounded by the twisted symbols of the society, I knew that I had to confront the darkness head-on. The air was thick with an otherworldly presence, and I could feel the weight of my own mortality bearing down upon me. But I steeled myself, knowing that this was the only way to break free from their grasp. I raised my hands, and a faint light began to emanate from within. It was a small spark of hope, but it was enough to guide me forward. I began to chant, my voice echoing off the walls as I spoke the words of the ancient ritual. The symbols on the altar seemed to come alive, twisting and writhing like living serpents. But I stood firm, my heart pounding in my chest, as I called forth the power that lay within me. Slowly but surely, the darkness began to recede, pushed back by the light of my own inner strength. The society's leader emerged from the shadows, their eyes blazing with fury and hatred. "You fool," they spat. "You think you can defeat us? We are the masters of this world." But I stood tall, my voice ringing out across the room. "I am not afraid of you," I declared. "I have faced my own demons and I have emerged victorious." The leader sneered, but I could see a flicker of doubt in their eyes. And then, in an instant, it was over. The ritual was complete and the darkness was vanquished. The society's leader let out a scream of rage as they vanished into thin air, banished from the mortal realm forever. I stood panting, my chest heaving with exhaustion, but also with a sense of triumph. I had confronted the darkness, and I had emerged victorious.